What's up, witches and watchers? Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. I'm super excited to talk about another episode of the Wheel of Time TV show with you all. And boy, was this another action-packed episode. It felt like there was definitely a lot of storyline crammed into this one episode, but I have to hand it to them because at no point did it really feel rushed or anything. I think we're definitely still hitting all of the important plot points and story beats that we need to, and boy, did we in a big way in this episode, so let's get into it. Episode 6 is called The Shadow in the Night, but the main plot point for this episode is what I'm calling the Black Aja and the search for the Randcuffs. But we start with a flashback 95 years ago, so long before Rand was born, I think even long before Moraine and Swan were born, where we get finally the culmination of Leandrin's backstory that they've been laying down the breadcrumbs for in these past few seasons. Leandrin's tragic backstory and how she learned that she could channel, and I'm just gonna leave that there. What's kind of even more tragic is that not only would no one there on the streets of Tanchico help her, but the only person that did step up to help her was Ishamael in his full dark lawyer getup. Have you or one of your loved ones been a victim of the patriarchy? Call the law offices of Ishamael and Baalzaman. This just made me really sad for this poor girl that, not only was she probably groomed by her husband or, captor, for lack of a better word, but then now it seems like she went straight from the frying pan into the fire and was further groomed by Ishi. That's just what I'm gonna call it, because girl was like 12. And I was hoping that maybe this was a hint that we would see Ishamael reappearing in some further flashbacks, maybe the cold open from Eye of the World that I've been waiting for. Sadly, I think I've heard that the actor who plays Luther and Telamon isn't in this season, so sadly, I don't think we're going to get that long-awaited Kinslayer flashback that I've been wanting. So that seems like kind of a waste to just bring back Ishamael for this one flashback. So hopefully we'll see some more of him somewhere. He comes to her here in the World of Dreams, since this is in the past when he was still arguably, for all intents and purposes, sealed away. In the novels, we do come to find out that since he was said to be the closest to the place where the boar was sealed, he wasn't fully sealed, so that's why he's become even more insane over the millennia, because he was semi-conscious throughout that whole passage of time. But then he was also able to, as we see here in this scene, touch the world of dreams and influence history and goings on in Randland and even in Shan-Chan before he was ever fully freed. So he had a hand in, I think, influencing Arthur Hawkwing to turn against the Aes Sedai and the White Tower back in the day, and caused that separation and rift, which then led to his descendants sailing away to Shan-Chan and going full anti-channeling, and the Damane thing that is the result of that. So yeah, he definitely had an influence in all of that. And then the rift with Arthur Hawkwing and the Tower is also what led to the Aes Sedai having to kind of hamper themselves by agreeing to the 3 oaths. And we find out that that largely handicapped them in a lot of ways. Shamael definitely still had his fingers in a lot of pies for being supposedly sealed away for all of these years. But then we cut to what I thought initially was another scene in Teleron Riyadh itself, but I think they indicate that it's just Leandrin's own personal dreams, so Lanfear is definitely able to infiltrate people's personal dreams and manipulate them, which is totally dark-sided. But there's a lot of Forsaken plotting, plots within plots, and Lanfear still playing 4D chess in this episode because she's still pulling Leandrin's strings, as we see here, and says that she won't let them pit the Forsaken against each other by some of them trying to go off and scheme with Ravin, but she's doing a pretty good job of plotting against the other Forsaken on her own here. And as we'll see further on in the episode, she clearly doesn't know completely what Leandrin and her coterie are up to in Tanchico, i.e. looking for the Randcuffs. So she's probing them for information there, and Leandrin's still being very cagey about it. And I think Lanfear, if she found out what they were up to, definitely would not approve of their plan to cage Rand, since she does not approve of any plan that might interfere with her plans for Rand, and i.e. keeping Rand all to herself. And so she then commands Leandrin to find the other member of her party that is plotting with Ravin. And we do also see in the very beginning of this scene, if you watch closely, someone that may be Mogedian spying on this entire exchange softly, softly from the shadows. But Leandrin then reveals to the rest of the Black Aja and the audience that the Randcuffs require 2 bracelets / Aes Sedai to collar one man. I mean, especially a guy as powerful as Rand, as we will also see at the end of this episode. But Mogedian, I love in this scene, is not even trying to hide that she's peeping over their shoulders and looking at what they're doing. And they make reference here to what we saw Child Leandrin seeking shelter under, which is the Shackled Man statue, which now the only thing remaining is the man, but in the ye olden days, it apparently did have the 2 women or Suldam to either side wielding the bracelets. I love this next scene here where the girly girls are girling and having their fashion montage moment, and finding out that not just women in Tanchican culture, but all of the men wear veils too. Because, I mean, could you just imagine an entire culture where only one gender was required to go around covered at all times, lest their mere presence be too distracting for the opposite sex? I love that Matt is the one that ends up donning the very elaborate beaded veil, which seems to indicate that one is a lady or gentleman of the evening. And boy, is he really rocking that deep V.
Who is that?
I also love here that Elaine's turban and the knot on the front of it definitely looks like a rose, especially with the end kind of coming out to look like the leaf at the front, and a little nod to the rose crown of Andor. And I think her dress pattern and color is maybe a little nod to a floral or a rose color as well. So she's still sporting her House Turkand colors even when she's undercover. Or as we will see, maybe not so undercover in these next scenes, because they say that they're taking care of the subtlety, but subtlety is definitely not her strong suit. I also wonder if Ishamael's presence here in Teleron Riyadh 95 years ago, as I said, years before Rand and even Moraine were ever born, is maybe a indication of the whole which came first question that I posed in one of my other breakdowns, where I wondered, which came first, the seals on the Dark One's prison starting to weaken, or the dragon being reborn? I think this is maybe leaning toward the first one, where the seals were obviously weakening or not strong to begin with. If a Shamael is able to be out and about playing with things this whole time, and so maybe the seals weakening is what led to the pattern churning out Rand and the Dragon Reborn as a result. But then we have a scene which is another little nod to goings on in the books where Egwene and Elaine and Nynaeve too are just really out here trying to masquerade as full Aes Sedai, passing off their accepted rings, and the fact that a lot of people don't know the inner workings and the full hierarchy of how the tower works, to be able to tell that they're not really Aes Sedai. But Egwene comes clean with the wise ones here about not being a full Aes Sedai, and Bear makes a point of telling her that she can't beat Lanfear in Teleron Riyadh. Lanfear's just too strong, and I think Egwene in the books could definitely go on to be strong enough in Teleron Riyadh, but for now, she's too untrained, she's too much of a novice still, and Lanfear's just too good. But in Egwene's own dreams, she holds the most power. I touched on that in the video that I just filmed about Teleron Riyadh and how it works. So I like that we're getting into a little bit more of the World of Dreams lore here. Cut to Moraine, who is just being very dramatic here and just literally wafting around. But the minute she closes her eyes, she is immediately pulled into Teleron Riyadh by Lanfear. Yikes. And Lanfear is, of course, mad that Moraine did not separate Rand from Egwene, and then tells her that she's sending them a surprise for Rand, but she wants Moraine to take a back seat and just let Rand handle it. So she clearly, at this point, knows where they're hiding, knows they're in the waste, and that Moraine went through the rings in Ruidian, and I'm just like, how does she know that? Which makes me think that she was definitely spying on everyone in that last episode when we saw those glimpses of her as Egwene was piggybacking Moraine into Teleron Riyadh to have that whole conversation with Swan. I think this is an indicator that Lanfear was definitely spying on them. And Lanfear also immediately clocks that Moraine is more scared of her now as a result. Also, yikes. Then another great scene of Rand learning more about Aiel society and culture from Avienda. I loved seeing how they managed to grow food in the desert on trellises, and the types of plants that they are able to grow, like the squash and the beans. Love this little humorous scene where, like I said, they only have goats there as their main and primary livestock. So poor girl over here has never even seen a sheep, doesn't even know what that word is, so she's just like, oh, goat herds take care of goats, so shepherds take care of sheps? And Rand's just like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's go with that. Love that he's getting schooled in Gieto from a literal child here, but in spite of that fact, Rand takes her very seriously and recognizes that he has toe even for her. So points for Rand, at least for now. I may have to take them away from him because of what happens later on in the episode, but this is literally notes that I was taking as I was watching for the first time, so I did not know what they were going to do to all of us, and especially him, by the end of this. But let's move on back to the Two Rivers, where everyone's like, Perrin's hurt, get Alana, he needs healing, and they're just like, yeah, about that. A lot of people apparently thought that Alana had died in the last episode, but I definitely thought that she was just gonna be taken out of commission. I thought maybe until the very end of the season, and that this was gonna be their way of forcing her to take a back seat for the Battle of the Two Rivers, because if she was there, she would probably be able to win the battle single-handedly. But I think from the teaser we got for the next episode, she's going to be off on some sort of side quest. So maybe still not participating in the main battle. I like that we get a little bit more relationship building and between Perrin and Fael here, and a little bit more character building for the both of them in this episode, where she's giving him another lecture on leadership and says that he can either spend all of his time mourning the dead or he can take care of the living. And I think this also mirrors in a lot of ways what we saw in Rand's flashbacks with the Gen-Aiel, or the predecessors of the Tuatha'an, whom Perrin learns about the Way of the Leaf from, and is still, was grappling a lot with that concept versus the need to do violence. It kind of mirrors what Rand's ancestors said about having to bury the dead and then move on, because what else is there? She talks a little bit about how her parents were generals. Little old book reader me got all excited and thought maybe she was alluding to her dad being one of the top generals currently living in the Third Age, Davram Basher, because I was like, oh, how did your dad get to be so smart, Fael? But then we go on to find out that they've kind of completely changed her backstory for the show. Womp womp. So much for that idea. The eerie whistle can only mean one thing. Padan Fain is finally appearing in the Two Rivers, with some Trollocs and some other miscellaneous Stark friends in tow. So that makes me wonder if they were the ones Perrin actually sensed coming through the Waygate in the earlier episode, and it was not the red herring Alana or Fael and Lord Luke, but just kind of makes me wonder, where is Lord Luke? What's he been up to this whole time? And then another great scene of Matt dicing and Tanchico, when what does he hear but Tom Marilyn singing about the Horn of Valir of all things. What a coincidence. So the Taverin is definitely Taverining in this episode, drawing these two back together. And I knew that he was due to come back in this season, so I'm glad to finally see him reappearing here and in his upgraded, more flamboyant Gleeman's cloak. And bonus Matt's hat. I'm just like, Matt's gonna get that hat. A lot of people, I guess, were upset that Tom in season 2, was it season 2 or was it season 1? No, it was all the way back in season 1 that Tom first appeared. Not in the Two Rivers as he originally does in the books, but in that, I don't know, I just want to say, like, it wasn't just the dive, it was a dive bar, but I feel like it was like just a dive bar of a town in general, in that random backwater slum Rand and Matt stopped at. But if you looked closely in the scene where Tom made his first appearance, he did have the patchwork coat on. It was just in the inner lining of his coat, and so I wonder if maybe it was just like a reversible coat that he could turn inside out if he wanted to be more ostentatious. But Tom is definitely a guy who knows how to play to his audience and knows when to stand out and when to be subtle, and so I think if, he didn't want to immediately get jumped in that dive bar slum town, he knew to kind of, when in Rome, do as the Romans do and dress down a little bit and maybe turn the coat inside out to not be as ostentatious and fit in more with that audience. So, Anyway, now that I went off on that whole tangent about fashion in the Wheel of Time, as both I and Robert Jordan are wont to do, we see Matt and everyone are trying to go undercover, slum it with the locals, and look for info on Leandrin and company, and also the Rand Cuffs, which is a little bit different from the novels where the girls are all kind of learning to dreamwalk using ter'angreal at this point, and just by thinking about the object that they're looking for, are able to find their way not only to Tanchico, but also into the Panarch's palace where it's being held. But here they're just kind of slowly trying to pry the locals subtly or not so subtly for info on these people slash objects. And then cut to Leandrin and company, where she's trying to pry Naomi for info. And I really liked Naomi's robe here, or dressing gown, where the pattern on it kind of looked like bats or ravens. And then a nice little Easter egg here with the other sister holding the cats, which could be Marilyn Gemalfin. If you know, you know. Future editing me here. Hopefully I will remember to go insert this into the breakdown video, because I was going back and forth on the little Easter egg with the Black Aja sister and the cat on who it was, because Marilyn Gemalfin is the one in the novels who had a penchant for taking in and caring for strays, but I was certain that there was another member of the Black Aja group who also had a penchant for killing those cats that the other one was trying to care for. And I'm pretty sure it's the one shown with the cat here, Chasmal Emery. I also happened to notice in the scene before that, one of the ter'angreal sitting in front of Naomi on the desk looks exactly like the twisted stone ring dream ter'angreal that gets given to Egwene originally in the books and launches her whole Dreamwalker arc. And then later on, Elaine and Nynaeve end up being able to use it to also access the world of dreams. So hopefully that will lead to some more of what I'm talking about in this breakdown, as far as wanting to see more of the other girls learning to enter Teleran Riyadh with the Dream ter'angreal and be able to have secret meetings there with Egwene. So hopefully one of them, either Elaine or Nynaeve, will get their hands on that ring. And then a really weird scene of like Mogedion. What the fuck are you doing? Just being creepy, weird AF. But I think it definitely plays into her power dynamics, where, yeah, she is the one who is willing to, in the eyes of the other Forsaken, maybe debase herself by being willing to play a servant role, lurk in the shadows and lurk undercover, but also in the open at the same time. But she's not just gonna sit back and play into that power dynamic of being treated like a servant. She's gonna find some way to passive-aggressively get back at the people who think they're above her. More Egwene getting Dreamwalker training from the Wise Ones, which is primarily about training her willpower. I was right. I called it when I said that Lanfear, if she wanted to in the last episode, is probably capable of pulling people from their own personal dreams into Teleran Riyadh. And I think that's definitely what she does here, with being able to not only kick the Wise Ones out of Egwene's dream, but then pull Egwene out of her own dream and into Lanfear's domain. As if her traumas and tortures up until now weren't enough, she's just being straight up taunted to her face by Lanfear now, when Lanfear's like, "Ooh, did you like what you saw? when you walked in on me and your boyfriend last night? And then on top of that, trying to defend and excuse Rand's action by trying to say, like, oh, well, clearly he doesn't know the truth about who you are. And Lanfear's just like, oh, honey, he knows. He knows everything. Because Egwene's right. Rand doesn't know what Lanfear's been up to this whole time, and probably would be pissed if he found out. But Lanfear lies about that, and I think definitely tries to intimidate Egwene into not speaking up about it. But I really have to give Egwene props for being able to just like stand 10 toes down, as the kids would say, and just look Lanfear straight in her forsaken face and just still maintain her defiance even in the face of Lanfear. And I also loved that Bear pulls out the same example that I used in the Teleron Riyadh video that I just filmed before this episode, because I mentioned that even things like channeling can work very differently in the world of dreams, since it is so largely based on thought and will, that it doesn't really matter how strong you think you are in the one power, or even how strong you think you are in Teleron Riyadh. Bear says that if you think you're stronger than the other person, you will be. So just like I said in my World of Dreams deep dive video, if you think you're more powerful than the other person, even down to thinking you're a more powerful channeler than them, or just more powerful period, even if you're not a channeler, then you will be. So she says, if you think you're stronger than Lanfear in the World of Dreams, you are. Love that the wise one herself used the same example that I pulled out. A great scene here with Rand and Moraine speaking one-on-one, where we see that he is still beginning to really be worried, brood on the idea that he's going to go mad and kill everyone he loves, because he's asking her all these questions like, do I go mad? Do I kill Egwene? Do I kill you? And Moraine's just over here like, yeah, sometimes. And sometimes we kill you. She mentions that using the Sakarnen and channeling that much of the one power feels a lot like wielding Saidin. And so I love that we're getting more of them and Rand talking about what that feels like, because it is very different from channeling Saidar, and that's why he can't just go to a female channeler and learn to channel Saidin, because they kind of work in the exact opposite way, where a female channeler has to open herself and just surrender to Saidar. And then it just kind of feels like Egwene when she went down the river and you're just the bank of the river controlling the flow. But Saidin is not like that, because on top of it being corrupted by the devil, Saidin itself fights the channeler. It fights to be controlled, and you have to really wrestle and grapple with it and maintain your hold on it the entire time, and never submit and never give in to it, or it will burn you out, much like Moraine when she was trying to use Sakarnen. So yeah, I love that we get more in-depth discussion about what channeling feels like for Rand, and scenes of him beginning to now scare people with it, which we were starting to see in the books at this point. Like I mentioned, people like even his really close friends like Matt are starting to be really wary of Rand with his newfound Dragon Reborn and Karakarn status, and just kind of knowing in the back of their minds what usually happens to men who can channel, and worrying about his mental state. And yeah, with things like this, it naturally is starting to concern people, because not only is Saidin itself really easy to lose control of and do things you don't mean to when you're channeling, but you also have to grapple with the madness that comes from it on top of that. He tells Moraine that she has to do the opposite. Don't submit. If what you've always done isn't working, maybe you need to try a different way. And so I like that the show is touching on that as well, and that if Rand says if there's anything he's learned from people like the Aiel and even the Forsaken, it's that, as I have said, the Aes Sedai are not the end-all be-all of channeling. There are a lot of things that they have forgotten since the Age of Legends, and a lot of techniques that other groups of channelers have in the current age that they don't even know about. Touching on the gender dynamics of the Wheel of Time, because for all its intents and purposes, in flipping usual stereotypes and gender politics on its head, it is at the end of the day a system that works on a binary where it's women side are, men siding, and never the twain shall, you don't cross the streams. Like, we do have some instances later on in the novels where some of the Forsaken, who we aren't getting in the show, that were killed early on, get brought back by the Dark One as the opposite gender, and so they get reincarnated as women, but women who can still channel Saidin, which is interesting. But I like that we kind of get this thing from Rand here that it's called the One Power at the end of the day, and even with it being separated here, at the end of the day, it works a lot better and is a lot more effective when men and women work together in tandem and in unison. And I also really like that in this scene, it seems like Moraine is already treating Rand a lot more like an equal. Up until now, she's been the one in charge. She's been the one trying to pull at the reins and say, go here, do this, don't do this, and lecture and coerce. But like I said, she remembered how to channel Saidar, which is by surrendering. And on top of everything she learned in Ruidian, learned that she basically has to just submit at this point and stop trying to control things, because the more you try to change your fate, the more you just kind of end up interfering with what's supposed to happen. Also, just recognizing that Rand learned a lot by going to Ruidian and knows a thing or two at this point also goes a long way toward her being willing to see him on more of an equal footing with her now, on top of just, knowing that she has to stop trying to control Rand. Then we go back to Perrin and Fael, where we finally get her full backstory, which is very different from her origins in the books, where she is still from Saldaea and her parents are still military generals and she's still from a military family. She's not, I mean, unless they don't reveal this part until later, she is related to the Queen of Saldaea, and so she's not like directly in line for the throne. I think her dad is the Queen's uncle or something like that. Here she reveals that her mother was a dark friend. She ran away after her mom tried to recruit her to the dark side, and she refused. And she also feels guilty because she exposed her mom as a dark friend before she left, and then her mom murdered Fael's brother, murdered her own child when he confronted her. So giving Fael her own tragic backstory / dark secret to go along with Perrin's, so they both have some baggage here that makes them relate to each other a lot. So I can see why they made that change in order to give them that more of that foundation of being able to relate to each other, because in the novels it was just kind of like they meet, Fael thinks he's cute and is really curious about what he's up to, the Taveron's Taveroning, and she just kind of gets pulled in and entwined with his story because Taverin. So here they actually have some things and like some commonalities to relate over and bond about. And that because Perrin then also reveals his own tragic backstory and his guilt about Layla and the way that she died, on top of his current feels for Fael and his wolf brother status. And not only does this not send Fael screaming into the night, but she's kind of into it. I think she kind of thinks it's hot. Then more of her encouraging him, like she does in the books, to step up into that leadership role. He's very reluctant. He's like, why me? I don't have any prior experience. I'm not good at this stuff. But she's like, no, man, like, you got that alpha wolf in you. You're a natural born leader, and you do have some experience out in the world now, or at least a hell of a lot more experience than anyone else in Emmons Field does when it comes to Trollocs and fighting. She's like, you don't have to get over it, but you do need to step up and take care of the people who are still alive. We then see Fane entering the White Cloak camp masquerading as a full-on White Cloak questioner now, saying he's there to reinforce Valda, which last episode I said that him and Valda being together on screen was just going to be too much evil for one room. So I'm really wondering who's going to reign supreme in the battle of love to hate the most. Because I'm just like, why does he roll up looking like an even dirtier, more evil version of Valda, right down to the hairdo and the white in the hair? Like, bro is coming for his gig. And I also love in the Perrin Fael scene that he finally breaks the news to Fael that not only was the Horn of Valir found, but it was his own friend that found it and blew it. Like, yeah, that's my bro. No big deal. And not Alana, of all people, being the cockblock. The irony. More Tom and Matt. Love to see it. Like I said, everyone else has kind of had a mentor for them. You know, Rand has Lan. Perrin had Elias. Gwen has Moraine and the Wise Ones and the Tower. But Matt didn't have anybody, so now he kind of has Tom. Whether Tom likes it or not, because I also love that Tom knew what Matt was at this point and was trying to avoid being sucked in by the Taverin shenanigans even more than Book Matt usually is. So that made me laugh because usually it's Matt trying to avoid being sucked into Taverin things, and now it's Matt sucking Tom into Taverin things. I also like that they made a point of showing that Tom recognizes Elaine here and reveals that he was part of Margaze's court once upon a time. File that away for later. And he goes on to save Elaine's ass, and we get the promised Elaine singing scene. All I could think was that Matt, seems to have come to appreciate Elaine a little bit more now. I said in my last breakdown that if he put aside his preconceived notions about her, that they'd probably actually really get along because they have a lot in common. And yeah, he did seem to appreciate her a lot more after she sang that bawdy song about boobs. The Hills of Tanchico is an absolute certified banger. At the end of it, love that Matt went from from really disliking Elaine to being like, that's my friend up there, yeah, I know her, she's a friend from work. Did we just become best friends? But as we see, subtlety is not their strong suit because, yeah, not only is Elaine just full on up there dancing on the table, veiled down, there's gotta be other people besides Tom and those other people in the audience that recognized her as the daughter heir. And then Min and Nynaeve aren't really being any more inconspicuous by loudly mentioning Leandrin by name, and sure enough, who's there eavesdropping but one of the Black Aja, Ispan, I believe. And sure enough, the one that Leandrin suspected the most was Naomi, because she calls her out and uses Naomi's own special technique against her, but in super hardcore mode. Not only that, doesn't care who sees it, because Ispan walks in and she's just like, this is fine. A lot of Aes Sedai develop their own special techniques with the One Power that they don't always share with each other. Moraine is able to use her little gemstone that she often wears as an amplifier or like a focus for Saidar in order to eavesdrop on people. And Leandrin's special technique in the books is a mild form of compulsion, but here that seems to be Naomi's special technique that she steals. Redemption arc? No thanks. I want to be the next Forsaken. But she does reveal before she gets ganked that the other part of the Rand cuffs are in the Panarch's palace. We're back in the Two Rivers where the Cawthon girls come to see Alana, and so I was like, ooh, will they be able to use their newfound channeling to heal her? And yes, indeed, they do. So that definitely has to make Alana feel justified, if not actually feel a little bit better about taking 1 or 5 for the team, if it meant saving future female channelers. Her mission here was not in vain, so yeah, she's literally like, I told you so, to Maxim. And I know it's another scene where untrained channelers, much like Egwene and Nynaeve in season 1, are able to do these feats of healing despite not really knowing what they're doing with the One Power, but in this case, at least Alana talked them through it, so I'll allow it. And then we see that not only is Egwene up there dancing and singing on the tables, as if once isn't bad enough, she's up there giving an encore. Cool performance, Elaine. Way to be inconspicuous. As I've said, the ta'veren is ta'verening, and might also, in this case, be a little bit of Matt's luck on top of it, because we see that the random dude he approached at the beginning of the episode to look for pieces of the Rand cuffs actually manages to find a part within hours. I know, yeah, normally people would be like, what? That's way too convenient. But even in the novels, a lot of that kind of stuff happens and is able to be explained away as just ta'veren things. Matt's ta'veren and luck is definitely on his side here. Even though subtlety is not Elaine's strong suit, especially in this episode, upon further reflection and comparing this to the kinds of things that she does in the novels, this is Elaine. She's reckless, she has zero sense of self-preservation, and she's constantly putting herself in danger like this. Now, I was wondering where they were going to go with the Black Aja and Moghedien storylines in the show, because from what I remembered in The Shadow Rising, Moghedien was lurking around in Tanchico and knew what the Black Aja were up to, but I don't think she ever confronted any of them directly. But in this episode, she definitely does, because we get a scene where she confronts Ispan in Talaran Riyadh and asks which of the other Forsaken she works for. So my first thought was like, wait, you mean it wasn't Naomi and Leandrin just killed that other member of her party for nothing? Under compulsion / pain of torture, Moghedien does kind of ask her here if the one she's reporting to is Ravin, and then Ispan goes on to say that she, i.e. Leandrin, found out about Naomi. So that makes me think that both of them were reporting to Ravin, and also reveals Leandrin wants to be chosen and she found 2 of the 5 who the Dark One is hunting. So I was like, is that Min and Nynaeve, or Nynaeve and Matt, because 5 could be the 5 Emmons Fielders? And I just think it's kind of funny, and I almost feel, well, I don't exactly feel sorry for the Black Aja, because they made their own choices, and like they made their own beds, and now they have to lie in them. But they've just got to be getting all of these conflicting orders coming from all sides right now, and have way too many supervisors to report to, because at the beginning of this episode, Leandrin tells Lanfear that the Black Aja used to report to Ishamael. So arguably, right now, none of the Forsaken are in charge, which means all of the other Forsaken could just be using them by showing up and claiming that they're in charge now, and who's gonna argue with them? Case in point, Lanfear had Leandrin kill her own allies just for working with Ravine. Now Moghedien killed another one just for funsies. Then we get a scene straight from the novels, the infamous Moghedien compulsion scene, and I have to give it an 11 out of 10 for book accuracy and the way that it was portrayed here, especially with Elaine and Nynaeve. Yeah, I love the way the scene is acted and portrayed, where Moghedien is just like, tee-hee, girl talk time. Just come over here and spill the tea. We're all friends and we're laughing. It also reminded me of the artwork from the 3 of Cups in tarot, and I like that because they're compulsed and they have to tell the truth, Nynaeve has no choice but to just straight up admit her block here, and that it's also deeply rooted in fear. Nynaeve and Elaine just absolutely nailed the fawning and simpering and the eagerness to proudly tell her everything they know, including that they found a piece of the Rand cuffs. So I was just like, no, Nynaeve, don't do it. I love that Nynaeve is the one who is strong enough to subconsciously resist the compulsion, and she's fighting it and trying not to give her the bracelet. Yes, Nynaeve, that's my strong, stubborn, protective Two Rivers girl. You fight that compulsion.
Jafar, he's our man if he can't do it.
They had the bracelet and it's gone. Also, like that Moghedien alludes to what I talked about in my last breakdown regarding that scene in the Fires of Heaven where Lord Gabriel is talking about wanting Elaine either back under his control or quietly gotten rid of, because Moghedien tells Elaine to her face that Ravin wants her dead, and that she even sent some gray men after Elaine on his behalf. Oh, but then the heartbreaking scene that I predicted last episode where Egwene finally confronts Rand about Lanfear. And I hate his behavior. Really, Rand? You're really gonna try to mansplain it away to Egwene as she just wouldn't get it. You don't know what I'm dealing with. You just wouldn't get it, Egwene. And also, she's only been having to spend so much time away from you training with the Wise One to protect herself from your crazy ex-girlfriend. But I really do have to wonder when Egwene asks him if he loves Lanfear and he hesitates. Does he really love Lanfear at this point? Or has he just been manipulated and groomed into thinking he does? Arguably, yes. They have both been clinging to the past and each other, perhaps clinging to their past and their past selves by clinging to each other. Yes, Gwen, stand up for yourself and drop some knowledge on Rand's bitch ass. Tell him what the deal is. Tell him that your precious Lanfear has been tormenting me every night while you've been off canoodling with her. So now you know, Rand. Now you know. So what you gonna do about it? Gwen may not want you like that anymore, but at least she's always been loyal to you. But they don't really get any more time to hash things out because no one expects the Samael Shadow Inquisition. They're lucky that he came in set to stun and not kill. Samael's power hammer was kind of sick though, I'm not gonna lie. It's about time. Go off, Rand. Show them what you can do with the power. Wait, no, not like that. What are you doing? Samael was just in the back there like, don't tase me, bro. And can we just take a moment to compare the size of Rand and Egwene's weaves and shield compared to the size of other channelers that we've seen so far? So it's definitely a vast difference. Rand and Egwene are literally on another level here, and Samael clearly was not prepared for that. And all I can think is that Lanfear knew that this was exactly what was going to happen and definitely set Samael up. Hi, Samael. Bye, Samael. I mean, we see Samael's body on screen, which in TV trope land is a confirmed way of telling us, the audience, that yes, they are 100% dead. But I can't really be mad about it because I couldn't even remember how Samael died in the books, so it was that forgettable. In the book, Samael ends up getting lured by Rand to Shadar Logoth and gets got by Mashadar, which is a pretty lame way to go. So this was definitely a lot more awesome and unforgettable in comparison. Instead of being lured to Shadar Logoth and gotten by the mist, Show Samael got lured to the waste and wasted by Rand. After what he said to Lanfear in that previous episode and the way he mocked and taunted her to her face like that, of course she would literally kill two birds with one stone by letting Rand power up via killing Samael for her. So she's one step closer to Nablus, has one less enemy going after Rand now. And this will also make the other Forsaken think that she's willing to work with them by telling Samael that she's willing to reveal Rand's location to him. Then also make it look like to the others that she had no connection to his death. Obviously, Rand is the one who's responsible for his death. But speaking of Samael and death, I knew this scene would be coming. I thought it wouldn't be coming until we went to Tyr, but no, they gave it to us now, and boy, did they really amp it up for the show and made it hit 10 times harder, to the point where I could no longer take coherent notes. So that being said, I'm going to now present to you a dramatic reading of my stream of consciousness while watching this scene. OMFG, no. I knew we needed the Rand tries to bring girl back to life with Sidon scene, but don't do it like this! Exclamation. WTF show. Not like this.
Not like this.
Not Althera. Rand, no. Rand, no. Don't do it. I hate this for him, but love for his story arc. It's a very important scene where he needs to learn that as powerful as he is, and as many things that you can do with the one power cannot heal death. 11 out of 10. I rewatched this scene and Yosha's performance several times because he just really nailed it with the waves of emotions and the impact of prophecy and hitting him and what it means to be the dragon reborn and how much things like this are going to impact Rand in the future. Now, I gave this episode a 9 out of 10 only because I thought this should have been the last scene of the episode. But overall, even though this was a very fast-paced and jam-packed episode and monumental in terms of scenes like that one that we got, it didn't feel rushed. Even Perrin and Fail's relationship development feels natural and organic, especially because she does latch onto him so quickly in the books, but here they're at least spending some time and learning about each other. I wonder if Moraine is going to admit that she and Lanfear were in on Samael's sneak attack, especially just with the way Moraine casually strolled up to behold the carnage when all was said and done. I mean, you would think that if reports were coming in that the camp was being attacked by Shido and possibly a Forsaken, you could have at least made a pretense of running and looking concerned, but she just casually strolled up. Even if you weren't directly responsible and didn't know exactly what was going to happen, Moraine was at least added to the signal chat before it went down. Lanfear clearly set this up with Samael, commanded Moraine to stand aside and let Rand handle it, and this is the end result. Not only was there collateral damage, but damn it, show, y'all got me again, because even though I knew we had to have this scene, I did not know this was how or when it was going to play out. When it came to Alcera, I was Sweet Summer Rand. I did not see that coming, and that it being with her, and that makes it even worse and even more impactful because it's not just some random girl he comes across and doesn't know as collateral damage because of his actions. And even in the books, we don't know if Rand was directly responsible for her being killed or if it was Trollocs, but here he was directly responsible for her death, and it was someone that he/we had come to get close to and know personally. Fuck you, Joe, for killing Rand's soft side like this. I knew it had to happen, but why'd you have to do it like this? 11 out of 10 for Yosha and his acting here in that scene. In the novels, I think from an outside perspective, it's hard to tell where Rand's mental state is at, and a lot of people will overhear him talking to himself, or he tends to have this really grim, sardonic sense of humor all of a sudden, and people interpret that as him losing his grip. When we have chapters that are from Rand's POV, I think it's more of a mix of a little bit of actual madness with a lot of bit of that sardonic humor as a coping mechanism. We definitely start to see him losing his grip a little bit here in this scene, understandably so. So I think this is going to be a precursor to Rand starting down that pathway a lot more and entering that mindset of detachment as a coping mechanism, for better or worse, because it's starting to finally hit him the impact of what it means to be the dragon, and that you're going to see a lot of people that you don't even know and people that you do know putting their lives on the line for him, dying for him, being made targets just because they're around him. So not only does he become very angsty and emo, but he starts to detach and separate himself and try to close himself off from everyone as a result. And I think having the girl not just be collateral damage of his actions, but also be someone he had developed a bond with, is going to push him even more to start going down that path where he thinks he has to become Stone Rand and not feel any emotions, which is probably not what you want to do when there's already people here trying to pull you to the dark side. Let me know what you guys think of this episode, especially if you are a book reader. What did you think of them moving that scene from Tyr to here? What do you think about Fael's changed backstory? I'm a little sad that it means we're not going to get Davram Bashir. I get that there's a lot of storylines we need to cut, and the Northern Army's storyline was definitely one that is not important and that dragged on for too long and that I could see dropping. But as a character, I really liked Davram Bashir because he was one of the few that was willing to stay by Rand's side in spite of everything. Being in the Two Rivers and seeing Rand here also does really make me miss seeing Tamil Thor in this season. But other than that, yeah, I give this one a 9 out of 10, and in some specific scenes, like the compulsion scene and Rand, 11 out of 10. Hills of Tanchico is a bop. Wheel of Time is giving us way more in the form of songs and entertainment than Game of Thrones did, because there you have two choices. For in-world music, you get either the Rains of Castamere or the Bear and the Maiden Fair. So here already we are getting so much more in the world of the songs of Randland. Did not like to see the final nail in the coffin of Sweet Summer Rand in this one. But I'm gonna leave this one off there, and until next time, stay classy, everyone.